native of Flint?
No, actually, I grew up in the South. I was born and raised in southern Indiana and Tennessee. And then in 2001, yeah, it was 2001, wow. My job transferred me up to the Flint area because I was working in financial services and helped with Social Security and retirement, and General Motors had been cutting back the benefits for their retirees like quite a bit, so there was a need for it. So and I jumped on the, I jumped on it, the job, the actual promotion, because there was things here. Like I had grown up where you had to drive an hour to go to a mall, and we didn't have even a Walmart or a Taco Bell. So, I went from a town where everybody knew everything about you, which, was kind of okay, but not really, to a city of, 100,000+ people. And, it was exciting. It was definitely way different, definitely a culture shock, but it was, for me, it was welcome. My husband, not so much. But my job transferred me, it was, April 1st of 2001.
And were you already married? Did your husband come with you?
Yes, yeah, we were married, and at that time we had one child. We had and we thought it was gonna be it. And then we had, several years later, 2 more surprises. So, so we have 3 sons. But moved to Flint, and I was running my agency, and then my mom passed of cancer a few months later, so then I ended up, quitting my job because I missed the chance to say goodbye to her because I had to work over, and I wasn't supposed to. So, kind of hit me hard. So then I was 23 at the time and had to plan her funeral and do all that. She died at 44 of colon cancer. So health was always really important to me as well, because it hit Mom. She got diagnosed when she was 40 with colon cancer, and it just came out of the blue. And she'd smoked all her life, and yet her lungs were pink and perfect, but she ended up with colon cancer. And so, so that was a big, huge, shock. And I tried to research everything because it came back. It came back not even 4 years later, and in the form of tumors on her bones. So it had already gone to her bones and then went to her liver, and it was pretty quick. So she passed away pretty quick after we moved. So that's something that, I've always looked into and researched and never been afraid to go to the doctor. And, I guess that helped me with everything that ended up happening, with the water crisis here.
Besides the water crisis, the amount of time that you've spent here, especially as an outsider, which makes you kind of look at things a little more sharply maybe, you've seen a lot of changes in this town, haven't you?
Yes, I have. I hear stories, and I wish I was here for the heyday when just everything was booming and everything was amazing. But I'm glad I missed the huge crash, like in the 80s when General Motors was allowed to pull out. And I remember when we had bought our first house a few months after we moved to Flint, and I was actually pregnant with our second child. The cable guy had come and hooked the cable up, and I was flipping through the channels to make sure it worked, to tell him okay. And then I saw something. I was like, oh, it's a documentary about Flint. I'm going to watch it. Well, it was Roger and Me. And I looked at it and I was like, I just sat there and watched the entire thing, and I'm like, oh, good God, we need to pack. I was like, what did we do? What did we end up doing? And it was such a shock. And then I started looking at things, and but then again, I was young with kids, and then I got into doing music promotions and saw what an amazing heart this city has. Like and how many times they have been punched. I learned about the emergency manager law years later, and I learned about all of the things that Flint has done for the rest of the country, the rest of the world, when it comes to organizing, and that's for housing rights and civil rights, and then worker rights, union rights. It blew me away. I'm like, wow. And all I knew is I was moving to a place that had things, and it was in the middle where there were, basically we picked Flint because it was freeways, because I managed the thumb area, which I had to get used to the whole hand thing. I'm like, I grew up in Indiana. We didn't point. I lived in the heel of the sock. We didn't do that. So the whole thumb. So it was just centralized to a lot of the major freeways. And I'm like, yeah, that's right in the middle. That makes sense, But how amazing the city is, and just the spirit and how you can't break it, and all of the creativity, and just, so I just became more and more enthralled with the city and how much I loved it, and, the budding music scene, and, just everything started falling into place, and doing well, and watching people rebuild, and watching people, stand up for their city. And that's something that, man, we can, talk smack about one another, but anybody from the outside, you don't talk about it. That's the thing. And I'm just like, I respected that so much because, you know, it's like how you are a family. And that's what Flint is. So as an outsider with, you know, a Southern accent and all these things that I had, you know, for years, it was interesting to see how welcomed I was. And people are like, hey, you got spunk. We like you. Let's, you know, let me teach you about this. Or let's do this. And then I, you know, started promoting and managing and, you know, touring with metal bands. And that was awesome for 12 years. It was awesome. And then the water crisis hit. And then
one thing I have seen with the people that have been through here interviewing is like, and I've interviewed a woman that, you know, advocates for North Flint, and I've talked to people who were in the auto industry and then like the rug got pulled out from under. It seems like the people of Flint are tough.
Yeah. And the thing is there's a toughness with Flint because so much has been done. And I always say, like, you know, don't refer to us as victims. We're not victims, we're fighters. We've been victimized by people who've done some really awful things and profited off the backs of trying to destroy this city and trying to break it apart, but the spirit never breaks. And people don't. We fight back. It doesn't matter if we're sick, we're poisoned, we're poor. It does not matter. And that's the one thing I've noticed across so many, and not just the water crisis, so many issues. Flint's united across, you know, racial lines, gender lines, the areas of town, because we have very, you know, distinct parts of town, but then all of a sudden we're merging over the one, you know, usually the one same issue of we're protecting our city. We're doing what's best for our people, not what's best for your bottom dollar, you know, and that's something that's that attitude that Flint's got. It's like, you know, Claire McClinton had said, you know, you poisoned the wrong city. And, you know, we didn't break apart. And, you know, I guess they figured because we're a majority black and brown city, we're poor, you know, we're always at the top of the poverty, you know, levels across the city, the highest poverty levels, the lowest education levels. I guess they just assumed that we'd be too busy trying to scrape by to actually organize and actually unite across all of these lines that have been put in place to separate us. And I've done a lot of, I've learned a lot from people like Reverend Jesse Jackson, who talked about how he had learned from Dr. King that if the poor and middle class, well, what's left of it, were able to get across all of our imposed barriers, we'd be able to, and united, we'd be able to fight and take back our country and do what's best for our people, for the people, and you know, because that's where the real power lies. And you know, we would be able to, you know, be the 99% and, you know, take it back. And then, of course, that's, you know, why he was killed. It wasn't so much about the racial justice as it was economic. So, and that's what I got warned. I have had some great teachers. Lois Gibbs, who was a little fireball that had detained some EPA people back in 1978 for Love Canal, New York, until the president showed up and moved her city and declared them the very first, you know, major site as for, you know, poisoning, and, you know, because they were living on nuclear waste coming up through their floors, and they were the first Superfund site for the EPA, and so she's given me advice, which is my attorneys are like, no, hey, you know, don't be kidnapping EPA reps because nobody's going to care at this point. You know, nobody wants the EPA anyways, and you know, you're not going to get anything from them. So we didn't do any kidnapping. But then Erin Brockovich, you know, she had said she was, you know, the first time my brake lines got slashed. Actually, I had done a water drive at the machine shop. I'd put on a concert because I'll tell you what. When there are people that are in need, you get the rock and metal crowd out there, and they give the most because they're the underdogs, and that's what Flint is. We're the underdogs. We're scrappers. We're fighters, and we loaded up U-Hauls full of water, and it was amazing. And we're getting ready to leave, and we filled both of my trucks up as well because, you know, we didn't get enough big enough U-Haul, and you know, we have 2 Ford Escapes, and one's in my name, the older one's in my name, and the newer one's in my husband's. And magically, the one that's in my name, somebody had rolled under, and we even looked at the cameras at the machine shop, and somebody had slid under my truck and then slid out. But then what we're doing is, it's, you know, 2:33 in the morning. It took us forever to load all this bottled water out. And this is February of 2015, and I had just, you know, been in it a month and a half maybe, just started. And, you know, I just was new to all this. I thought, hey, if we all get together, you know, poisoning people's wrong, right? Right is right and wrong is wrong. And, you know, that's what I was taught. And I thought, you know, if we busted everything out to the world, that, you know, they would come fix us. You know, like this must be a mistake. I'm way different now. That was the innocent Melissa, the like light in her eye. Like, people will realize that they're doing something wrong, and of course nobody wants to harm people on purpose. So, then there's the eye roll. But so we were driving home, and my husband, right up Dordt Highway, and my husband was like, called me, and he was like, hey, I got to pull over. I got to pull into Taco Bell. I'm like, why, you hungry? I'm starving, And he said, no, I don't have any brakes. I was like, okay. So then we pull over, and I get in and hitting the brakes like this, and he was like, oh yeah, there's holes punctured right in the brake line because it's just squirting out. And from the South, we've been stranded on the side of the road with cars. I grew up in a garage, so it's why my husband married me, I think, because I'm not really girly, I guess. But my dad wanted a boy. He wanted a Michael, and this is what he got. So I grew up in the garage, and so I was like, great. So we'll just roll it home because then I talked to Erin Brockovich and Bob Bocock. They were huge. Bob Bocock, which is her water expert, taught me every bit of science that comes rolling out of my mouth, and taught me what was actually happening. He they've done so much for us, and Bob actually came here February 14th, Valentine's Day. I'm sure his wife loved that, to help march. We had a huge march in like negative 10 degrees, and he's from California, so he wasn't exactly dressed for it, and so everybody was giving him like scarves and gloves. But yeah, we did a march, and then he did a town hall and did everything. So anyhow, I told them what had happened. I said, yeah, somebody cut my brake lines. My husband changed it. There was 3 holes punctured in it. And I was like, somebody owes me $18 for a new brake line. And I guess my husband's some labor. And so he told me, and he, and Erin had said, she's like, now's the time to make a decision. She said, now you decide, do you shut up and be safe? Because now you're on their radar. And I'm like, who's they? I'm like, what are you talking about? Who's they? And, the people that are, she said, you must have touched a nerve. And she said, when you touch their wallets, that's their nerve. And that, me talking about going back to Detroit at that time with Detroit Water, we thought that would fix everything. But also talking about the Carragandi Water Authority, this pipeline, which is the actual reason they switched our water originally, and what they're currently blending with our water right now. And it's not going well. Yeah.
Let me ask you something.
Sure.
This is all fantastic, but let's take it in little chunks.
Oh, yeah, sure.
That would help me, because everything you said is just blowing my mind. So
it's been 7 years of like, oh my God, seriously? Yeah.
When did the water crisis begin? When did you notice there was something wrong with the water? Like, what was the genesis of this whole thing?
So because they wanted to, because the city and state wanted to put us on this more privatized pipeline, because the more privatized you are, the less regulations you have to abide by, and the more money you can make. So it wasn't because Flint was broke, because we had invested hundreds of millions of dollars into this pipeline. That was unnecessary. It actually runs right parallel with the Detroit pipeline. However, it isn't treated at the source. Like when the water's pulled in, Detroit treats it at their water treatment plant and then sends the clean water out to the communities. And that's where Flint had our water for 50 years, because we didn't use the Flint River because it had been dumped in by numerous factories and everybody, basically. So they decided to build another pipeline right along it, but not treat the water at the source, to pipe raw water, which is not done anywhere in the United States, because then they could sell it for fracking and to different factories that wouldn't have to spend the money or time to remove the treatment chemicals from the water. So they would just have raw water, but then that also would be sent to us, but treated at our completely outdated, defunct water treatment plant, because people in public health weren't important, which is a recurring theme. Profit was. So, they said, oh, we're going to save money. Detroit's raising the rates too high, which ended up, we proved false, because actually the city of Flint was increasing the Detroit rates 1,000%. So Food and Water Watch actually did the research and put it out there, and I was like, well, great, another lie. But also they said it would save us money, but my water bill had gone from $70, $80 a month, which was about 3 times as high as the people down the road who had Flint Township water. They paid in 3 months what I pay in a month. It had gone up about $45, almost $50 in 1 month, the first month we were on the river, the Flint River. So they decided they were going to, take us off Detroit, which then, of course, ended up with Detroit going into bankruptcy, because we were the largest customer at the tune of $14 to $17 million a month for water, and that was the last asset for Detroit, because everything else had been privatized and sold off. So they basically were going to put us on a privatized pipeline, and then they were going to bankrupt Detroit, get rid of Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, and create Great Lakes Water Authority. So there's 2 regionalized water systems that's quite profitable. However, our treatment was going to be completely subpar, and it's never been done. And the contract itself they didn't buy enough million gallons per day to actually supply water to the residents of Flint and the residents of Genesee County, who are also getting the same water this Carigandi Water, the KWA or Genesee County Water, they got a new water treatment plant. We didn't. So, so we got to use the old broken one because we're just Flint. We're just Flint. However, the county would go bankrupt without Flint, without our tax revenue. But we're just Flint. We're just a poor, black and brown, stupid, undereducated community, so who cares? All our neighbors got, new water. And people were shocked because only the city of Flint was switched. None of the neighbors that were going to be on the Carigandi Water Authority, because basically the pipeline wasn't finished yet, they got to wait and they got to stay on Detroit, to where we did not. And so we were the only people that were switched. And so when people started noticing, April 25th, 2014, they flipped the switch. And they switched us off of Detroit and onto the Flint River. At that time, nobody knew that one, the direction of the water changed, tore up the pipes, and two, they had no corrosion control equipment in the water treatment plant because it was just a backup all these years. And there was no way to put corrosion control in the water, but also that the river itself was 19 times more corrosive. That's why nobody in northern states uses river water, because road salts and all that fun stuff. So some residents actually started experiencing in May of 2014, their water started turning brown and orange, and they were lucky. Seems not, but they were lucky. That was iron corrosion. Iron corrosion doesn't really kill you. It's not good for you, but it's not going to do the damage that the other neurotoxins are going to do. And people had warning. We didn't. Our water was clear because lead, and copper, and a lot of other heavy metals and a lot of other contaminants have no odor, no taste, or smell. So there were people that started marching and protesting in June. Also, at that time in 2014, our water bills just skyrocketed, just continued to go up. Come to find out later, they were illegally raised multiple times. We still have that lawsuit in the courts. But our house, we didn't have the discolored water. Now, we had the funky smells. So, I went to graduate school. My degree's in business, so I didn't know anything about water or water treatment. All I did know is that I paid my bill, as hard as it was because it's expensive, pay my taxes. And so I figured that when the city and state went on the news constantly to discredit the folks that were waving their jugs of yellow, orange, and brown water around, they said that it was just their homes. They must have old pipes, and it must have just stirred something up. Not a total lie. And they said the river water's just a little harder. So, they're just having some issues and they're working it out. But the water's safe, not to worry. And I'm like, well, they would know. They're the experts, right? And what did I know? I'd never worried about any of this stuff. I didn't care about government. I voted, but it's not like anything like I never went to city council meetings or anything like that. I didn't know any of this stuff. I just knew that, hey, they wouldn't give us bad water. That doesn't happen. So, what did although I should have known better because I'd already seen Erin Brockovich, but I'm like, you always just think, oh, that's just them. That's just them. And that's a really terrible thing they went through. It's just awful. And, but that doesn't happen to us. And of course I'm coming from having well water. So having city water, it was just awesome. I was like, oh yeah, there's chlorine in it. I don't have to boil it, blah, blah, blah. Because of course, being from the South, when there's a water problem, you boil water. And that's what we did. So we didn't have discolored water for the pretty much most of 2014. It started turning yellow and then green in December of 2014.
So for a while, you thought this is terrible about the orange and yellow water, but our water's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It didn't have a smell.
No, it would have a smell every once in a while, but it would change one day from the next. So we would play this, guess what that smell is or whatever. Was it bleach? It smelled like bleach some days. Some days it smelled like feet. Some days, it would smell like dirt, cardboard. We found out later, there was wood mains still are downtown. So I'm like, oh, but so it would be that odd thing, but it would go away. And then by that time, I was in my mid-30s, and I had my 3 sons, plus I was raising my two-year-old niece for that whole year. I was a little busy and working, and I was just like, we'll just run the water for a little bit, and it'll be fine. We'll just get it out of there. And that's what you did. But then also started realizing you were getting nose blind to things. You started not noticing the smells because it almost felt like it was burning your nose out and your eyes. And so, we started doing things like, let me just boil the water. Let me boil the water and get the smell off of it. I don't know what this is. And then we started noticing things like our cat would jump in the tub after a shower because, he'd love the water dripping down out of the faucet. But then he would go throw up and he started losing hair. And I'm like, oh, what was wrong with him? I was like, oh, is he getting old? And you do this thing, especially as a woman. It's like, I'm not going to complain, Okay. So then my hair starts falling out, and then I start getting rashes. And I remember I had this like rash on my cheek, like in the fall of 2014. And I'm like, oh, and it hurt. And I don't know if anybody's ever had this, to where if you have like a really serious face wash or a microdermabrasion soap, and then you try to put lotion on it, it burns. And I'm like, ooh, chemical burn. That's what it was. With every kind of lotion you could think of, I'm like, oh, and I kept putting it on there. And then we would make jokes because in our mind, we never imagined, never fathomed that it was the water. I'm just sitting here thinking, I must not be taking care of myself. I must be working out too hard, because at that time I was with one of my best friends. He and I would go to the gym 4 to 5 days a week, and because I wanted my tattoos to look awesome, so I was working on my biceps, and I was working with a natural physician to make sure I was trying to lose weight in the right places, because I was trying to keep my top heavy, like I gained for having 3 kids, and then just get rid of the rest of the stuff, So, which isn't exactly the best way. So all of a sudden my hair started falling. I started getting tired. I'm like, am I working out too hard? But I was also filling my water jug up at home, because I wasn't going to buy bottled water. Well, I got perfectly fine, really expensive gold water here at the house. So I'd fill my jug up before I went to the gym. And, I'm not going to sit there and smell it and I'm filling it up cold. So there's not steam rolling off of it. So I don't smell anything, don't notice a problem. And it's filling up clear in my jug. And I was drinking 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons of water a day, because, I was trying to be healthy.
So you're drinking it straight out of the tap, like you do.
Yep. And then in the summertime, we ended up finding out that there were 3 boil water advisories because of E. coli and fecal, which is as gross as it sounds, coliform in the water. I didn't know what that was. And we found out about them after the fact, like after we should have boiled the water, because apparently there were main breaks, so there's bacteria just having a party in these lines. But, again, I'm not going to sit there. I don't watch the news at night. I'm so busy. I have everything going on. I would see blips on Facebook, and that was basically it, like, oh, okay. So we'll boil the water then. What nobody told us is that when you boil the water, you concentrate the metals, because there's less water in there, but the metals don't go away when you boil. So when I boiled the water to make food, I was giving my kids lead spaghetti. That's what they said, and as my kids were running around and I was giving them water, even after I boiled it, I was giving them that. And then also when you boil it, we still have an issue with total trihalomethanes, which is disinfection byproduct, meaning there's a lot of bacteria and other volatile organic, just junk in the lines, in the water lines. So they were throwing in additional chlorine to try to kill that off. The additional chlorine made the water more corrosive. So then they would try to back off so we basically, a month after they switched our water, we failed our first safe drinking water test. None of us knew, for total trihalomethanes, which are carcinogens, so cancer-causing disinfection byproducts. And so when you boil the water, it's releasing that into the air, into your homes, so the steam.
In 1 month, you went from perfectly healthy water to cancer-causing water.
Cancer-causing water, deadly bacteria, Legionella. We've had record-breaking Legionnaires cases. We're still having them every summer, because when it gets hot, the bacteria grows faster, chews off that iron corrosion that I talked about before with the orange and brown water. Grows in your water heaters, all sorts of wonderful things. And then also disinfection byproducts and other chemicals. So they just continue to throw chemicals in to try to fix it, and it made the water even more corrosive. And when they put in fluoride, which is a corrosive gas, the high levels of fluoride with the high levels of chlorine made an acid bomb. And we were kind of lucky in that way, and with the how quickly the river water plus all the chemicals corroded our pipes to let people know there was a problem. But not so much, because there's so many people that died. And so many people I know that have thyroid cancer and bladder cancer, because, boy, I loved coming home after the gym and sitting in my tub and taking a bath.
Did you just say that people died?
Lots of people died. Actually, the criminal charges that were by the previous special investigation team, by the special prosecutor, they found hundreds and hundreds of additional people that had died from bacterial pneumonia on their death certificates, which were most likely misdiagnosed Legionnaire's cases, because Legionnaire's is a form of bacterial pneumonia. Now, my little one, my son, my youngest, had pneumonia September of 2014. My doctor didn't think to test for Legionnaire's, because at that time, you didn't have a problem with, Legionnaire's disease, you didn't have Legionella unless you had a hot tub or a commercial air conditioner. We had neither. Nobody had said a thing, even though they knew, the county and the state and the city knew that there was already deadly outbreaks of Legionnaire's, and they weren't saying anything, so the doctors didn't test. So now they're going back through the death certificates to see how many had died during that same period, and there was hundreds hundreds of people that had died, and people I knew that had pneumonia, like myself. I ended up with pneumonia during that same time. It took 3 different rounds of different antibiotics to get rid of it. Something that should have, like a Z-Pak should have, things like that. But there was only 3 different antibiotics that actually work with Legionnaires. Luckily, my son, his pediatrician put him on Augmentin, which is, usually for kids, right? So he's lucky. So my son's still around because of that. Damaged the lungs. So, when COVID came around, it's good times. Mine as well. And mine, I didn't get put on Augmentin right away because I'm adult, and usually it's a Z-Pak. You go to that. Doesn't fix the Legionnaires. So we lost a lot of people going back to 2014.
When did you start to put the pieces together? Your son had this...
He had pneumonia, and he said, how does he have pneumonia in September? It's warm, it's lovely in September. But then also, at the same time, September 2014, my middle son fell off of his bike. He was, I think, just turned 11, fell off of his bike, and his 2 bones in his wrist just shattered. And the doctor couldn't figure out why are his bones so brittle. Like, what's going on with this kid? He drinks tons of milk, he takes his vitamins, all this stuff, what's going on? Had no idea. No idea. We didn't look for lead, didn't do any of those things, because usually they look for lead in kids that are under the age of 2. You crawling around eating the lead paint. That's what everybody always talked about, was lead paint. Never could it be lead in the water coming from, lead pipes or anything, or galvanized steel pipes. So, didn't think anything of it. Everything I just chalked up to just weird. Or with what that was happening to me, I chalked it up to stress, and I'm getting old, and I'm taking on too much, and I'm doing too much. Maybe it's just that. Maybe I don't know. I developed a wild range of food allergies out of nowhere. Used to go from eating everything, and now I'm allergic to gluten, egg whites, lactose, nuts, and some nightshades, and NSAIDs. So yeah, that was fun. So that came out of nowhere. Well, where did that come from? I don't know. January of 2015. I am standing in my dining room, and I had a long day. It's like 9:30 at night. It's dark, and I'm going through the mail, flipping through the mail, like, okay, whatever, bills. And then I saw this little piece of paper that had been, trifold. It was, just folded over. It was addressed to a resident, and I'm like, oh, and it's from the city of Flint. So I rolled my eyes, and I'm like, oh, great. Another property tax increase, another, tax levied for streetlights we don't have out front. Because it's usually what it is. But then I was going to toss it and say whatever, but then I opened it up, and it was a ton of tiny print. And it had said, basically, for the previous 9 months, so basically since day 1 of the switch, we had been in violation of the Safe Drinking Water Act for disinfection byproducts. But the water's probably fine. It's fine. You'll be fine. There was some research included from the 1980s that said, people who swam with these things, it's swimmers, because that's that smell when you walk into a pool. It's not chlorine you're smelling, it's chlorine, it's the gas that's released when chlorine does its job and interacts with things like, sweat, pee, things like that. So it releases a gas. And, but it's fine. These swimmers are fine. And I'm like, doesn't seem fine. And it says, the water's fine, but you may want to consult your doctor before consuming it. And I'm like, well, that's odd. So I called my doctor, and my doctor's awesome. And he said, what am I supposed to know about this? I'm not a water guy. I don't know. They're the water people. That's coming from the water department. Why would I know? But he said, if it causes cancer, it means it's bad.
Do you think they sent that notice saying, we're in violation, consult your doctor to protect themselves?
Well, legally they had to. Because they had been in violation. They were coming up on the 4 rolling quarters, so the year. So they did it as a preemptive strike because things weren't going better. And so they sent it out to say, basically, we notified you. So that's the law. That's all we got to do. And they said, we're working on it, be patient. And then I remember reading it, and I'm like, I don't know what these things are. I read this letter, and I was like, what are total trimethanes? What are disinfection byproducts? What is this? And so I sat down in front of my computer, hit Google, and said, oh my God, this is not okay. And then it hit me that they lied to us. And then by lying to me, every time I handed my kid a glass of water over the summer or in the wintertime instead of pop or, and I used to get on my husband and laugh at him, like, you drink all that Mountain Dew, I was like, your teeth are going to fall out your head. Well, he just had his first cavity at 46. I've had 19. And didn't have any until also my teeth started falling out my head because I drank a ton of water, brushed my teeth with the water. So the corrosive water did everything. But at that time, I didn't even know. I knew that my head was exploding, and I was furious because they lied to me. That means I poisoned my kids. You told me it was fine. I trusted you. You lied. And if you lied about this one thing, what about everything else? And you start thinking about what everybody else thinks. And so then you get on Facebook, and one of my friends who actually, I met her through through all the concerts and stuff like that, she was putting on a protest. And this was January of 2015. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, I don't, I've never been to a protest before. There's, you see them on TV, everybody gets arrested, everybody's nuts. I'm like, I don't have time to get arrested. I'm a busy person. But let's try this. So my husband made some really cool looking signs that are still used in this day. So we got real creative with it. Both of us were kind of worried about it. I'm like, okay. So I saw people standing outside in snow and it was freezing. And, I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to talk to people, because I just wonder, is anybody feeling like me? Is anybody having this, Oh my God, yeah. So I walked up and down the street, and that's when What Are You Fighting For started. My husband and I founded What Are You Fighting For in January of 2015 as a portal of accurate information. So I figured if we can put the research out that's accurate instead of these letters the city and state are sending us that are completely false, or, they're kind of science and jargon. I put it in real people speak, so they don't have to sit there and go through it. And then I started asking people. I started going to churches, which I'm not a religious person. Started going to meetings, wherever I could find people with a spreadsheet, asking them, hey, what's been going on. So I actually started I didn't even know what an epidemiological study was, but I made a bootleg one where I went to people and I asked them, okay, what area do you live in? What, cross streets, because I don't want to take anybody's personal information if they don't want to give it. Have you had problems with your water's smell, taste, color? Are you having health issues? And so I found out, and that was just started from that first walking up and down the street at the protest, finding people, didn't matter their gender, age, race, part of town, people showing with bags of hair. Tony Palladino, who we just lost in January thanks to COVID, had a bag of hair. And he's like, look how much hair I've lost. And he had yellow water, he bottles of yellow water. And I'm like, oh my God, it's everybody across the whole city. It wasn't just one area or just a few people's homes because they're older and it's their plumbing. I'm like, and then I get mad. I have like 3 emotions: agitated or irritated, hungry and angry. And it just hit all of them. And I was furious. I'm like, you lied to this lady. You lied to this gentleman. You lied to these kids. You lied to these grandparents. How dare you? Who do you think you are? And what gives you the right to lie to people and to give them something that can kill them?
Who do you take that to? Who lied? Who's in charge of this?
So that's one of the things we started to research and try to find out. And boy, it was a fun game of ping pong. The city blamed the state blamed the city then blamed the EPA, and then they blamed us, saying, well, it's just you guys. So after starting What Are You Fighting For and, trying to get the word out, oh my goodness, I had never been so attacked in my life. I got called a bored housewife. I'm like, definitely not. I got told that I somehow put lead in my water to give it to my children. I'm like, where do you go? Do you go to like Sam's Club and buy it in bulk? Like, how do you do this? I got called every name in the book. I'm like, I grew up with all guys. There's nothing that I toured metal bands. There's nothing you're gonna say that's gonna shock me. I'm like, that's the best you can do? Good luck. Except somebody called me a rabble rouser. I like that one. That one was neat. But yeah, and then threats, and then somebody banging on my door with a gun, and then, they put a dent in my steel door. I'm like, that's really creepy. And so we had to get big dogs. So we got big dogs. And so it just continued on. And then it was everybody. It was the county. It was the state. It was the city. Anybody that had money in this pipeline. And at first I thought, well, these people just messed up our water. Oh no, then you find out it's for profit, and we got poisoned for profit. And I'm like, oh, that makes it worse. If it could get worse, yeah, it makes it worse. So people are dead because you greedy people couldn't get enough money. And I'm fine. So then I got pulled aside by the drain commissioner and said, young lady, we need to have a meeting one-on-one. I'm like, By that time, I'd already done my research and found out he was a FBI informant. And I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have time to get disappeared. And so we had people following me. We had meetings at my house. And then there were cars sitting in the abandoned house because the gentleman was actually off in Afghanistan at the time. So his house was boarded up because he was gone. And, but it wasn't, empty. But there's cars sitting over there watching us. And we're like, really? So we started becoming friends with people at the water treatment plant. And so they took me for a tour and they explained how it worked. They live in Flint. They didn't want this. They did not want this.
So they were doing something that they could get in trouble for because they wanted you to know.
Yep. And so they gave us water test bottles and taught us how to test. And so we started taking water test bottles because when Bob Bocock had come to Flint and he said, look, you got orange and brown water, that's iron corrosion. That's a corrosion problem. But guess what? Iron doesn't come alone. It's not the only material in this, because we're talking about the distribution mains that are made of ? Then you've got your service line to the house that's made of ? nobody knows, there wasn't terrible records. And then the plumbing inside your home, the faucets, the washing machine, the dishwasher, which we had gone through 4 water heaters and 3 dishwashers, and there was water leaks. There's people there was a lady that her Dr. McNeil, her bathroom had fallen through because there was a water leak running underneath the tub, and it had eaten through, and it weakened the floor and actually fell through to the her living room underneath. And so people's houses are falling apart, people are getting sick, people's bodies, also people are dropping off, people are dying, people are moving out, and you can't fault them, right? But then I realized, I'm like, I'm not going to. Because then, we're getting threatened and all this stuff. And then Erin Brockovich had said, here's how you do. If you want to stay and fight, get in front of the camera as much as you can. Because if you disappear, if something happens to you, they're going to look into who you were digging into. And I'm like, oh, can we skip the part about me disappearing? So that was one of the things. I'm like, well, okay. I'm going to run my mouth to anybody who will talk to me, because at first nobody would talk to us. Nobody would listen. They made fun of me, like, some of the reporters locally just tried to make me look like I was crazy, or that we wanted money, or we were whatever. And they're like, you broke Flint thugs. If you guys would have paid your water bill, you wouldn't have this problem. I'm like, well, if I hadn't paid my water bill, my water would have been shut off and we wouldn't be poisoned. So thanks. Oh yeah, to my face. I got told I put a black eye on Flint because enrollment at, one of the universities, U of M, former chancellor, had said that I put a black eye on Flint and I'm the devil because of my big mouth and poison the city. Enrollment dropped 3%. I'm like, well, also you weren't telling your students, and you have foreign exchange students and people drinking the water, and seriously, 26 languages spoken in Flint. And the only thing that ever was put out was in English, and then really bad Google Translate Spanish. So all of a sudden we're, uniting across those lines. And so we formed at first the different groups, because there was Democracy Defense League that was fighting the emergency manager law and the high rates. Then we met Dr. Laura Sullivan from Kettering University, who was in Haiti at the time and Africa, helping them filter water, while back at home, here, she flies home and she's like, what's going on? And then she got real sick. She almost died from dysentery, Oregon Trail type stuff, because she got Shigella, because the bacteria had grown on her filter, on her tap. And she got real sick. She almost died. And then she got called crazy, and they said, oh, well, you only get Shigella if you don't wash your hands after changing diapers. She doesn't have any small children. And I'm fairly certain a PhD knows how to wash her hands, and she's not just eating poo. But that's what they tried to say. So everything that we've brought, that's happened to us, it's the victim's fault. Oh my God, the victim blaming and the victim shaming. Other people from, just outside, even people in Grand Blanc are telling us, they're like, our taxes are gonna go up because of you people. Now these people got water problems and are asking me for help. But yeah, oh yeah. And I'm like, well, so I thought, it's just us people, that kind of thing. So we have had a lot of pushback, nationally, internationally. It's since it broke out, canary in the coal mine. So then during this time, I am literally physically falling apart. All of a sudden, I've got an autoimmune disorder. I'm like, what are anti-nuclear antibodies? What's this? Started having seizures. I'm like, I don't have epilepsy. Oh no, I've got heavy metals poisoning. Cool. Come to find out, copper is also a fan of short-circuiting your brain. And then women, because we're lucky, it also gets stored in our reproductive organs. Why not, right? And so the heavy metals get stored in your bones, your joints. I was giving a speech at the International Women's Convention in front of several thousand people, and right before Hillary Clinton was coming on, and I'm in there talking, and all of a sudden my tooth falls apart in my mouth, and I'm just blood running down my face. I'm like, also, our teeth are falling out. So great, my body likes to show off and just eject teeth, when it's, embarrassing.
So you have become like a supercharged activist.
Which is weird, because I'm not. It's funny because I don't see myself that way. I'm like, they did something wrong. They mess with my kids. They mess with my city.
When you say stuff like, I don't see myself that way, or I don't, like, my voice isn't going to be part of this.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if you say, I don't see myself as an activist, explain
right.
What you're saying.
So in the beginning, people started labeling me an activist. Oh, you're one of those loudmouth activists. I'm like, what are you talking about? What? No, because in my mind, activists are people who are out there like fixing things and doing things, like getting things, done. And it felt like we weren't getting anything done. And, we're living in it. And I just had never seen myself as that. And I'm like, no, like I'm just a really angry mom. And, and my friends are getting sick. And actually later on, I'd met Michael Moore, and one of the bands, Avenue Sky, practiced in my house. And they drank out of the tap after they were done sweating it up and making my house gross, after they were done practicing. And then I told him, I was like, oh my God, I think I was like, oh, I think I poisoned my band. He said, that's what your name of your book should be. I'm like, people still read books? And then he smacked me on the arm. But yeah, no, like, I'm like, no, why would somebody want to read a book about me? That's the thing. So it's always that, like, why? Because you have no idea. Like, when you're in the middle of the tornado, you have no idea. You don't see, first of all, most people aren't grateful. Most people are yelling at me, telling me to stop because, you're going to hurt people's, tourism to Flint. You're going to hurt this and hurt that. So it's all the time telling me to stop. Shut up. Shut up. My property taxes got doubled. I'm like, oh, that's cool. So the county hates me. Great. And so all these things just constantly, but then every once in a while, we would be canvassing, going door to door to check on people, to make sure they had bottled water, to make sure they knew how to change the filters because the instructions are terrible. And if you have any kind of arthritis or, you don't have perfect eyesight, you can't read that. And you can't do that with your, so down the line, 2016, we ended up forming Flint Rising, which was a lot of the water groups came together. And we wanted to make sure we were educating and empowering the Flint residents for, to find the recovery in the water crisis, but also beyond. Because we know this is not the last time that, and unfortunately we were right, that Flint was going to get smacked down. And so we wanted to get everybody together. So we started doing canvassing, going door to door, all 36,000 doors, and talking to residents, having, ward meetings, and getting buses to get people to DC and to Lansing where the decisions were being made. Because as much as we can protest up and down here, the decisions were being made about Flint. So about us, without us, and so we went to them. So we got, so it would be our state legislators, the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, MDEQ, formerly, now it's EGLE. They try to rebrand to get that, MDEQ stink off because it looks bad. Even Robot Chicken did a thing about MDEQ and the bad people there that poisoned us. But also legislators, obviously the former governor, Rick Snyder, and his emergency manager law that basically suspended democracy here in Flint. So what he did in 2011 was he had put this new form, because emergency management had been put in place for a long time. So if a city was struggling financially, then they would, the state would come in and have, basically send, an accountant, somebody to help straighten out the books, right? So former Governor Snyder decided to strengthen that bill and basically say that he would appoint an unelected person that would be able to do everything, break union contracts, do everything except miss a bond payment to Wall Street. So that meant our mayor that we had at the time didn't have much of a voice. He didn't use it anyway, but that's fine. He didn't have a vote, like people that we voted for. Even if they didn't get along. Like the one thing in March of 2015, the city council didn't get along for anything, but they did vote unanimously then to switch off the Flint River and go back to Detroit. The emergency manager and Governor Snyder and Andy Dillon, the treasurer's office for the state, said, no, it's too expensive. Inconceivable. So we remained for another 7 months on the Flint River. Could have saved a lot of lives. So even our elected officials had no say. The states who made the decision, actually Mike Glasgow, who was the laboratory supervisor here at the water treatment plant, had said, there's no way I can treat the water. We don't have the equipment. We don't have the staff. We don't have, because a lot of people quit because they didn't want to send the junk to their families or were fired if they didn't toe the company line. So they had a skeleton crew for a plant that wasn't meant to be full-time water support, right? For putting clean water out.
The only real solution would have been to go back to the Detroit water.
And that was the only thing we think of our mind. If we got the less corrosive water out, maybe something could be salvaged. However, they let it continue. So then what happened was the longer it went on, the corrosive water ate through our bodies, our homes, the pipes in the streets. That's why we have these massive cave-ins of our streets, because the mains are breaking, and all they can do is they just throw asphalt over it, so it continues to run under the streets. Houses are sinking, roofs are cracking. My 100 and some odd year-old house is resettling. I'm like, well, that's interesting, because the water tables are full. So the only solution now is to replace every single piece of infrastructure. But we also said, okay, so if you replace every bit of infrastructure, like from the water treatment plant, the distribution mains, the service lines, up into people's homes, their taps, their fixtures, it's about $1.5 billion. However, the water system as it is was built for a city of 250,000 and 8 large factories running on it. We're like 92,000 now, and maybe one factory that's on it. So we were like, well, this would be the time to be a good example to right size our infrastructure for the city that we have, the people that we have. And for some reason, that didn't fly, and they'd rather spend all the extra hundreds of millions of dollars on legal defense and fighting us in court. So that's a whole other chapter of this mess. But as we went on, we found out, yeah, there's a huge lead problem. We had actually started meeting Detroit activists who are dealing with water shutoffs, massive water shutoffs. And I'm like, oh my God, if you guys, they're getting shut off a block at a time, you guys are going to have a corrosion issue, because if that water's just sitting there, even if you don't have the, the really corrosive water, even if your water's fine, it's gonna, so yeah, now Detroit's got their lead problems. So then, they were also taking people's homes, because Michigan's got this really disgusting law to where if your water gets shut off, they can cap your sewer, they can eventually condemn your home, that kind of wonderful thing, and then place your overdue tax bill or water bill onto your taxes. And so we've had about 16,000 people lost their homes in Flint due to the inability, even the house was paid off, doesn't matter, inability to pay these illegally raised water bills. So then, okay, so you're pushing people out. Cool.
Let me ask you something. By the time that it's 2015 and it's known that there's a problem, is everybody not only contending with these water bills, but is everybody basically on bottled water now?
Yes. Well, at first, no, because nobody could afford it. First, they fought us for months. We found that there was high lead in the water in February of 2015. The city and state already knew it was there August of 2014, but didn't tell anybody. We found that out through a FOIA much later. So February of 2015, I started working with Leanne Walters, and we got her water tested, like Bob Brockovich said, and found high lead in her water, and all of a sudden all sorts of people's water. So we started taking the bottles around, to test bottles around to people to get their water tested all over the city. And we did a press conference, and we wanted to surprise everybody with the lead, and so we had done a petition to take the fluoride out, because also that was one thing we needed to do, because it was an unnecessary gas that was very caustic. It was causing the corrosion to be worse, and Bob Brockovich had taught us that. So we had a petition to take that out, right? So, because every town and city can decide on their own. Right? It's not necessary. So we're like, okay, make the water a little less corrosive for what we're dealing with, right? But during that press conference, we went, surprise, there's also high lead in the water, and there's a problem. So then what we also did is I knew that, well, we could only get to people online so much. We could only do press conferences and meetings. We needed to go door to door. So what are you fighting for? My husband and I spent our tax money, our tax refund, on printing up door hangers. I'm like, I know, because being in PR and all kind of stuff, I knew that you can't stick things in people's mailboxes. Don't put things on people's cars. But you can't hang a door hanger. So that is legal. And so I'm like, okay, clever. So my husband designed a really awesome, we got it done in color so it'd be grabbing people's attention. And we put on there, please get your water tested before you drink it. Please go to the doctor. And this is something I still beg people to do. Please don't do what I did and say it must be stress, or I must be just falling apart, that kind of thing. Or you shove it down because other people, you're worried you're taking care of other people, like me. I just ignored all my stuff falling off, falling out, to take care of my kids. And we then listed all the numbers, the MDEQ, the water treatment plant. We listed all of our elected officials, Congressman Kildee, Jim Ananek, at the time, Sheldon Neely, our state reps, and our state senators and all this stuff, and our city council people. We listed all the phone numbers for them to call. City council was on our side, so that was cool, because of course they live here, so they were out there. We were out there. That's where I met Eric Mays protesting, and people asked us if we were related. I'm like, yeah, dude, we're twins. Seriously, like, okay. But he also, oh my God, the history with the emergency manager, because he actually got censored by the emergency manager, wasn't allowed to talk to him because Eric kept asking questions. Because city council did have the power to subpoena the emergency manager and the governor. He tried and he got set out. So a lot, but also he got a mouth, but he knows his stuff. And that's the thing, is he knows his stuff, and all his constituents love him. And, hey. But yeah, so they protested with us, so we knew we had them on our side, which was great, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter. So we went door to door. We filmed people who would want to talk about their water and what was going on. So then I went to a few nicer areas, Miller Road mansions, where there's a ton of really nice houses, and kept getting removed by their their hired neighborhood security, knocking on doors and talking about the water, because people were telling me I was lying, I was making it up, I just wanted attention, and
Were these people that were living in these nice areas with the mid-mansions, were they having water problems?
Oh yeah. So here's the funny thing. When you have a large mansion, you usually have more than one service line because you've got a lot of rooms and a lot of bathrooms. The plumbers union, I became friends with the UA 270 plumbers union. They actually have something called the Octopus out there, and it's a lead service line that's got 4 branches off of it. So what I was knocking on, I was asking people, because I figured, okay, if like the rich people got in on this too, like maybe somebody would listen to us because nobody was listening. They're like, you poor people just want something, So I'm like, okay, oh yeah, no. They're like, well, we're friends with, Dane, the former mayor. Oh, no, he wouldn't lie to us. No, I know Snyder. Rick and I go way back and blah, 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 blah. No, you just need to go. And then they kept calling the cops on me, and they just ride me out to the edge of the neighborhood, and I'm like, I'm still going to come back. I got one lady who happened to work at the county courthouse. She answered the door and actually talked to me. She told me, oh, well, I wondered why the motor in our saltwater pool kept blowing out. They kept saying something about heavy metals, but I know what he was talking about. Yeah. So they were using the water to fill their pool, and it kept burning out their motors, and they'd spent $10,000 on this. And I'm like, oh. And then she also had a boiler. I'm like, oh, dear God, the steam releasing through all of your house. And I'm like, that's what a lot of the older homes and big mansions have. And I'm like, oh, my God. So she got her water tested. It was sky high. She had been sick and had been developing cancer. That's why she didn't know what was all going on because she had been off, and that's why she didn't kick me off her property. And so then she went to her neighbors. And then we got people tested. So we got people, even if they didn't want to say their name and their face, finally got the rich folk to realize, guess what? The water doesn't care what's in your bank account. Seriously. Now, they do have the money to get filtration systems in their home, plumbing replaced, and to move, which a lot of them did. But they were already sick. So, and that was unfortunate. But, I mean, we tried. We tried to get to them, and I'm like, stop kicking me off. I'm a nice person. Like I'm not trying to ruin your life. I'm just trying to warn you and just try to get some information, trying to get every area tested. So then we had gone back and forth with Miguel Del Toro from the EPA, who had snuck into Flint a couple times, and we had tested Leanne's house, started testing other houses. And then he connected us with Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech, who looked at our map on What Are You Fighting For, which we had printed off the map from all the data we collected. I got pictures, because I know that brutal pictures help. Children covered with rashes, children in the hospital with oxygen masks on the map where they lived, and put in there where they lived. I had a baptismal pool that had brown water. There was just all these different photos and lead test results and different things like that. So I put it on this big, huge map and took it to the governor's office twice. And yes, yeah, former Governor Rick Snyder. We met with him and people from the MDEQ, Harvey Hollins, and that was in July and August of 2015. And the last time we were allowed to go in there, and it was just a small group, was the Coalition for Clean Water that was trying to push, we tried to file an injunction to anything desperately to try to get back on, back on Detroit. And so they wanted to, I guess, hush us down, I don't know. And they dismissed. He straight called me a liar about the water bill. The gentleman who came in from the Treasury said I was lying about the water bills being so high, and they acted like they didn't know anything. And then, of course, the governor's office then blamed it all on our mayor. I'm like, but it's your appointed emergency manager. What? So anyhow, it was just a bunch of just everybody hot potato the blame, right? So then September 2015, we started working with attorneys. I'm like, all right, well, you're not going to listen. So here we go. We also during that time had replaced a mayor and got Dr. Karen Weaver in as mayor. And we had done the testing with Virginia Tech, which proved there was we actually had put out 300 test kits, got 277 back in 2 weeks. And we made history doing that and proved that there was a widespread lead problem all across the city. But they dismissed us, saying that, we all just wanted money. And to then, Elin Batanzo, who used to work at the EPA, was friends with Dr. Monahan Atisha and Dr. Reynolds over at Hurley and Mott Children's, who then said, these people are saying there's lead in the water. So what they did was they pulled the historical lead levels that had been in their records that, probably on their own didn't seem like much. They compared them to our map of the water, of the lead levels and everything in the different, we broke it up by zip code and by ward, and they matched. So the increased lead levels in the water matched the increased blood levels. So then Dr. Monahan Atisha came out, and she invited us to her press conference. I'm like, who are you? No doctors aren't talking to us, and they're, telling us to shut up and blah, blah, blah. Nope, she gave us credit. It says because of us. And then, she said it was a problem, and then we became friends because I'm like, all right, maybe you're all right, because at that point I did not have a good view of PhDs. Still don't, but except for some. And so So then they couldn't ignore it anymore, and then the state finally, in October of I think October 2nd, 2015, the governor came. Of course, never let us in the building. We're never to this day have not been in the building except for in Congress, in the same building as former Governor Snyder. I would be physically removed. It's nice. I'm a nice person. I try to act like level-headed so that way they don't try to label me as a crazy person, and because that was what they were looking for. Oh, if she cries, she's a weeping woman. If she's yelling because she's mad you boys and her kids, then she's, a crazy person. If she's this or that. Right. And so I actually did get cut out of a CBS interview because I didn't cry on camera. But my Leanne, who, she's as mean as me, she had apparently talked to somebody who told her to, learn to fake cry, pinch yourself, what you need to do, because then maybe the media will listen. So we're sitting here doing an interview at my house, because this is after she'd moved to Virginia. She's like, can we do it at your house? I'm like, yeah, CBS is coming. I want you to be with me. We're sitting there talking about the science. So all of a sudden she does it. She does pinch herself or whatever she did. Also she's crying. And I'm like, ugh. And so I made this exact face. Ugh, what are you doing? I was like, you all right? What just happened? What are you doing? Because she don't cry. I don't cry. She's also a military wife. We don't cry. We yell at people. And also she cried. I'm like, oh. And so I made a face. So I must have looked like a total jerk. So then in the final cut, you can see my shoulder and my hair, and it's my house with my kids' artwork behind us that I got cut out because I didn't cry. I'm like, oh my goodness, really, seriously. So anyway, that's fun. But yeah, so being a woman, I got called every name in the book because of that. Nobody takes you seriously. And I'm a woman without letters after my name. I'm like, oh, okay, so I got a master's degree in business, so what? I can still tell you that everything you're doing is wrong. And also I can run circles around you now, with water chemistry, talking. And actually, former director of Public Works, Howard Croft, he was putting in his position because he didn't know what he was doing. He was a solar panel installer. But they place people who don't know what they're doing, so nobody will call them out on what they're doing wrong. He came up to me, he's like, you know more about this water stuff than I do. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, that's terrible. I shouldn't, and everything. He was like, what does this mean? And I'm like, well, I'm trying not to have a meltdown right now. I'm trying to stay calm, what you just said. But then we talked about it and everything. And he was like, I need to, but at first I was like, oh my God. So that ended up happening. So then I ended up having these wild bunch of friends, the water treatment plant and all that stuff. So they're like, thank you for what you're doing, because they can't speak out, they'll lose their jobs. And so then, Mike Glasgow ended up losing his job, and that's terrible because he knew his stuff and he did everything he could for us. And he gave us stuff that got him in trouble, and, we tried to protect him, but, they obviously figured it out. There's only one guy there that,
Tell me about the attorneys. You're working with attorneys.
Yes. So we actually went two directions. So towards the end of 2015, in September 2015, we got introduced by the Concerned Pastors for Social Action, was part of the Coalition for Clean Water. And that was also something different that I had to get used to, was a lot of churches. But that's where you get a lot of power and a lot of people. That's how you can get to people. I'm like, all right, let me talk in front of your church. Try not to cuss. And I'll try to cover my tattoos, and I will try. And it didn't matter. Most of them are just like, all right, little girl. First, they were just like, well, we don't want a white face talking for us. I'm like, well, good, because I want your face talking for yourself. I'll talk for me, you talk for yourself. So then I got some spurred up older ladies, some older church ladies out there cussing, which is just, getting them out there, just protesting and everything. I'm like, now you got grandma yelling at you. We give them numbers to elected officials who were holding up bills for Flint and everything, like Senator Mike Lee, I think it's Senator, from Utah, single-handedly killed the Families for Flint bill for $262 million at the beginning of, I think it was February of 2016. Single-handedly. Also, single-handedly, he was one of the people that just knocked down help for Ukraine, too, because, why not? You're awful.
What does he have to do? He's in Utah. What does he have to do with your situation with the water?
So once again, it comes out that, Chatfield, who's the Speaker of the House here in the state of Michigan, told me one thing. He said, well, if we fix Flint, we spend the money to fix Flint, we'll have to fix all the poison cities. Yeah, so do that. Cool. Use my tax money for something helpful, useful. Yeah, it's fine. He said the same thing. Well, if we help Flint, they won't help themselves. I'm like, oh, that's that pull yourself up by your invisible bootstraps thing. Wicked. Real good. So I have just been a thorn in his side. I'm Flintgate on Twitter, so, that's where I get to be mean as can be. Oh, yeah, I never, anything that pops up, a bill he knocks down, I am, on there, be like, well, just so you know, with my article. He also did this, and people are like, oh, I'm so appalled. I'm like, good. You should be. Don't vote this guy back in. Let me tell you about I'll tell you later about when I went to Congress, too, and ran a guy out of the hearing. good work for me. So basically, they connected us. The Concerned Pastors for Social Action and Eric Mays had connected us with Trishelle Young, who's an attorney here in Flint, and she's on our class action team, our damages team, our civil team. But she also reached out and connected us to the Natural Resources Defense Council and ACLU of Michigan, who then said, okay, we might have a safe drinking water case here. It's a federal case, and it's not for money, it's not for damages, but what it is to force them to comply with the law that they're violating in so many different ways. And at that point would be providing bottled water, because they still weren't doing it, because the governor had come at the beginning of October and had said, you can buy bottled water with your bridge cards for people you spend your food money on. You can buy bottled water with that. Didn't go over real well. And said, hey, we're going to do a whole bunch of things. I have a 75-point plan about how we're going to fix Flint. None of it was replacing service lines. Yep. Giving money to all sorts of different things. We're like, oh, that's awesome. What? So yeah, but then he came back 2 weeks later, because also he said it was too expensive to put us back on Detroit, because they'd already sold the $3 million pipe that had connected us to Detroit. Oh, we sold it off already. No, can't get it back. I'm like, obviously. So they just picked it up and left with it, whoever bought it, which the county bought it. So then we had to pressure the county to give us our pipe back. And so then it happened, and we then 2 weeks later, after a whole bunch of backlash, because again, we grabbed the media, and we just, like I said, live stream anybody that would talk to us. We're like, hey, the one thing to do would be to switch us back. And then, and even by that time, switching us back, we didn't have even the equipment to put in corrosion control. We didn't have the things we needed at the water treatment plant to even add the proper chemicals. They said, well, we could throw these chemicals in the pipes, so it'll hopefully, patch, coat the pipes. I'm like, you can't coat holes, because what corrosive water does to lead pipes is it Swiss cheeses them. There's holes. I'm like, what kind of chemical are you going to do that's going to actually, and then we're going to drink that? So they couldn't give us any answers. And also, a lot of orthophosphates feeds bacteria. So then we have that. So the chemical that's supposed to save us didn't work anyway. So a couple years later, Professor Mark Edwards from Virginia Tech had said, oh, it was naive of us to think that could work. I'm like, yeah, I could have said something. Anyway, so 2 weeks later, Snyder was forced to put us back on Detroit. But of course, by then it was too late. Our infrastructure there was 14 years of life in an already aged infrastructure that was taken off in those 18 months we were on the Flint River. It ate 14 years of life off our pipes. So that was then we had to sue, because switching back helped a little, slowed down the eventual rest of the damage, but we need the pipes replaced. The pipes were damaged. You broke it, you buy it, right? So the state wasn't going to do it on their own, even though we asked. We're like, hey, why don't you do this? So we petitioned the EPA to step in. They did not. And so we said, okay, we're going to file this lawsuit. So January 2016, we filed the, sorry, I'm like, lip gloss, talking my lip gloss off. So January of 2016, we filed the Safe Drinking Water Act case, and to enforce the basically Lead and Copper Rule and Safe Drinking Water Act, and said you have to give us clean water, and the only ways to do that is to give us bottled water while you replace the service lines. Now, unfortunately, the mains, distribution mains, and the plumbing inside the home are not covered in the outdated Safe Drinking Water Act and Lead and Copper Rule that has not been updated in decades. So we'll find out why later. I had gone to Congress to try to, I testified in front of Congress. They asked me to come and talk about this exactly, why they need to do this. They had said, sorry, basically, they said, well, the right doesn't want the EPA to exist or any drinking regulations, which we had seen when Trump had come into office. One of the first things he did was get rid of the Clean Water Act. So cool, right? So we knew that we were up to it. Actually, when Trump got elected, I had said, welcome to Flint, everybody. Because he said he was going to get rid of the EPA and all that stuff. And then, unfortunately, I was right. And I really wish when I was sarcastic like that and I was just having a bad day that it wasn't right. Like, there's so many times, most of the time, I wish I wasn't right. Like, when I find these horrible things out or we're seeing it happen. So then I testified that how important it was to actually upgrade and update our Safe Drinking Water Act, because Europe has things like bathing and showering standards. We don't. So I went door to door to I mostly ask, like my Congressman Kildee's office, I'll ask him who's opposing things, because I like to go beat up on them. It makes me feel better. People that are on our side, I'm like, yo, thanks, but I'm not gonna, I'll have to beat them up so much. So go to the door and I would ask them, I would say, as I was leaving, I had a sheet, my kids' faces on it, because I know, and I listed all the things that was going on with my family, all the health problems and everything, and then I'll ask them, I'll say, hey, by the way, did you take a shower or bath yesterday or today? Which is a weird question, kind of off-putting, right? I'm a total stranger. And so people are like, oh, but then they don't want to not answer because, and they say yes. And then I break the tension and kind of laugh and say, okay, good, because otherwise I'm going to be like, ooh, yuck, I said, but, did you know if it was safe or not? And they're like, well, I'm like, before you answer that, the answer is no. You don't know because we have no bathing and showering standards in this country whatsoever. Have a good day. Whatever I got to do to make people think twice when they take a shower, because we don't. We have no hot water standards. Even though studies have shown within the EPA that shows that people get most of their exposure in the shower. You get as much exposure to contaminants like total trail and methanes as much in a 20-minute shower as you do drinking a 2 liter of water, because you've got inhalation and absorption. And people who brush their teeth and open their mouth in the shower, open their eyes, all that stuff. So that's a whole different thing. Got into an argument with a congressman from Georgia, and he stomped out of the hearing. It was awesome. And it's on congressional record forever. And I'm like, yeah, all right then. And I just big-eyed it, and I'm like, oh, you think the congressman would want to stick around? Idiot tried saying, basically, it's just Flint. We did it to ourselves, like we haven't heard that before. And it's not happening anywhere else. Well, yes, it's happening everywhere because everybody's got outdated infrastructure and everybody's cutting corners. Can't see it, not a problem. And so it's been a nonstop. So what are you fighting for now is helping people all across the United States. So back to the lawsuits. So during that time, we also decided we need to file, there was a time limit, we had to file damages lawsuits because obviously our Safe Drinking Water case, if we won, it was only going to replace service lines. It's not going to replace the mains or the lines inside our home and our appliances, or help us install filtration systems, whole home filtration systems, things that will actually help protect us from whatever they threw in our pipes next. So we are like, okay, here we go. Lots of lawsuits. So Mays v. Snyder happened, and then Mays v. Lots of them went out there. I'm like, oh my goodness. So we're suing a lot of people, but we were suing in all the different courts, like the county court of claims, the state court, federal court. Mays v. Snyder has been kicked twice to the Supreme Court, so RBG got to see my name on there twice, and then they threw it back, and they said, no, the state, you have to give people in the court, and people of Flint their day in court. We're not going to listen to your argument. I was like,
The Supreme Court said that.
Twice. And then the state Supreme Court said the same thing. So, and actually some of the arguments were hilarious that the state tried using, saying that I had, and I quote, I revel in this, I had superior knowledge of the water while I was out there protesting, so I should have known sooner that they were lying to us. The people of Flint should have sued sooner, because we should have known that they were lying to us sooner. And yeah,
How did it feel to have the Supreme Court rule in your favor?
Awesome, because the thing is the state of Michigan and the city and all the defendants, they have spent so much money. A lot of it is our money. Our taxes go to pay for their defense in the criminal cases as well as the civil cases. That's real fun. My tax dollars paid to defend the people who did this to me. Cool. They've spent so much money, instead of just fixing the problem outright, they've spent so much money fighting us, delaying, denying it. We're still not done. The service lines are still in the ground. We still have 1,400 homes that haven't even been identified.
I have no idea how we're going to condense this story.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
No.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay. What's the status now, and where does it go from here?
So all of the fighting, all of the congressional hearings, all of the hubbub, all of the media, the movies, the documentaries, the trials, the criminal cases, the civil cases, the federal cases. And yes, we made history when we won the federal case to force the city and state to replace all the service lines with no cost to the residents all the way up. We made history, so now other cities are following that and replacing it all the way to the home, to where they used to just do the city's portion at the street. So we're like, ha, ha, ha. And that was my little loophole, by the way, because I said, the water meter that everything goes into in my basement, is that mine? Can I take it? And they said, no. I said, well, then anything connected past that is not mine. And it worked in court. The attorneys used it, and they're like, yeah. But it set a precedent, so awesome, cool. And then we made the world history. So now we've got cities all over the place asking for our help. And the entire time we're saying, however, this is awesome, we're happy to help, and we're so glad other cities are getting fixed before us, which is a little bit of a stinger, but we're happy that people are getting, waking up to see that this is a problem and that we're fixing this. Let's go ahead and put legislature in, which of course is so not moving, because politicians and there are things that are against public health. I mean, we saw it with COVID. Everybody was Flint with COVID, Public health didn't matter. It was popularity versus spending money on the poor and, to protect human life and all that great stuff. So all of that we've said over and over again. If Flint doesn't get fixed right, nobody's going to. Because with all of the history of Flint, as goes Flint, so goes the world. And that's the way it is, because Flint's the birth of the middle class. Where's middle class? It's gone. right? For the most part. Look at all of the history-setting things we did do, as for, human rights and civil rights and housing rights and, union rights and all that. So here we go with the water. Canary in the coal mine, we call that all the time. I'm like, yes, but however, if we don't get fixed properly, which means the three things that Flint residents have asked for, and we know this by going to all 36,000 doors and talking to residents and having them actually tell us at Flint Rising and what are you fighting for, what they want. Number one is that all contaminated infrastructure from the water treatment plant up into every single faucet, fixture, and appliance inside the homes that have been damaged be replaced, and replaced with Flint hands. There's no reason we have unemployed plumbers in a water crisis. Number two, because also that would help also with our economy and our unemployment and everything. So that was number one, because also we didn't break this, so we shouldn't have to buy it. Number two is to give full health care. Libby, Montana got Medicare for all. Medicare, not Medicaid, because Medicaid stops at the state line and at a certain age, because we got the Flint Water Medicaid expansion, but once you're 21, even though your poisoning stays, your insurance stops. So adults didn't get covered at all. And you kind of need to be healthy to take care of these poor kids that are running through all of these attention issues, educational issues, kids getting kicked out of school because of behavioral issues, all these things that have happened that are of no fault of our own. No fault of our own. But wrap around mental health care, educational support, physical health care for the rest of our lives, wherever we choose to go. And then the third is for a refund of all of our poison water bills, since we paid the highest rates in the nation, 8 times the national average, since April 25th of 2014, because no consumer should have to pay for a poison product. Usually you get refunds, right? Common sense. So the things we're asking for, pretty common sense. And also, a postscript to that would be seeing people that did this to us in jail. Nobody sits in jail. If I poisoned one person, I would be in jail, let alone 100,000. Seriously? And they violated our constitutional right to bodily integrity and safety inside of our homes. This was how, because we have constitutional geniuses as attorneys, we were able to actually get past the whole governmental immunity stinker. That's what they kept throwing out. Governmental immunity, hey, it's the Nazi defense. I was just doing my job. Well, guess what? You can't hurt people. You can't send them poison into their homes and tell them it's, perfectly good water and you lied. So anyhow, so that's been good. So the civil cases are moving forward slowly. There's a small $600 million, which sounds like a ton of money, but you got 100,000 people, and then a lot of money is going to go towards different programs, like special education, things that, yes. So we need to make sure the kids aren't getting forgotten, that maybe their parents can't or won't file a claim right now. They'll be able to when they turn 18. So fine. But we also still have lawsuits right now in and the trials happening against Veolia and LAN, which are two private engineering firms that said everything was perfectly fine when it obviously was not, and the EPA. And so we still have those lawsuits out. So hopefully we'll all get our $12 sometime soon. And we all know we're not going to get rich. None of us are going to get rich. But it would be nice if somebody would pay help me pay the tens of thousands of dollars I've had to spend and actually take out Home Depot, sell my soul to get Home Depot credit card and different loans to fix my house, to help us pay for the filtration systems in our homes and to replace the plumbing. Because even if you put a whole home filtration system in, if you don't fix the plumbing and fixtures beyond that, it's no good. It's all, breeding bacteria and releasing all the great stuff that we've had to ingest and bathe in and endure and cook with. And
what happens when you turn the faucet on now?
So right now, since the city and state have decided to try to force us back onto the Carragandi Water Authority, and that's what we're 100% on right now, by blending, it's a loophole in the lead and copper rule. And it's another fight, because they found loopholes. Really, they are so good at finding loopholes. There is no real regulations on blending because nobody does it. Once again, Flint's the experimental guinea pigs that we never asked to be. And so they're blending the water and everything's gone wrong. The orthophosphate levels that are supposed to protect the pipes and all that great stuff have dropped to the floor. Our pH has gone up through the roof. So our lead levels have gone up through the roof again. And bacteria levels. People are sick. So right now, our water smells some weird, funky, awful. Like I actually ran the cold water the other day, and it actually stunk my bathroom up. I was running cold water because I was trying to clean something in the bathtub. Because also, fun things, we found new sources of lead. We have an old porcelain tub, which has lead paint, but it's clear coated, so usually fine. That corrosive water ate through that clear coat, so now we got lead deal in our tubs, and we've got to spend the money to get that replaced too. Otherwise, you're taking a lead bath. It's great. So we don't take baths, also, because the water doesn't need to go near delicate parts like that sitting in it. So sure would like a bath, especially with autoimmune disorder and the whole lupus thing and the osteoarthritis I've got. Sure would be nice to take a bath. But then when we go out of town, I can't go there because it's everywhere. So anyhow, so right now they're blending our water, so we're right back into the mess where we were. And any progress we've made, even the new copper service lines that got put in, guess what's getting corroded? So just awesome. So when we turn the tap on now, sometimes it's like a foggy white that I can ignore for a minute, but the smell is just terrible. My face is peeling again, and my kids' backs are peeling when they take their showers, and they're teenage boys. I would really like them to take time and take a nice shower, but also I'm like, well, then there's cancer, and then there's, God knows what is coming through, because nobody wants to help Flint anymore. Everybody has, Flint fatigue. You guys should be fixed by now. Didn't you guys somebody had told me the other day on Twitter, didn't you guys get $200 million? I'm like, that's real funny. It's a literal drop in the bucket. 1.5 billion is what our infrastructure was quoted at. Yeah, but the money, real funny, the money the state has put out and has received from the federal government, they put right back into their own programs. So, yeah, we're still sitting here with rotten pipes in our house, rotten pipes in the street, and and God knows what kind of water they're putting through right now, because all the FOIAs in the world, they're ignoring me. So I'm like, great. Well, and because I got COVID and I got sick and I have to deal with cancer. Actually, it was my fun end of last year. I haven't been out much, but I guess now, because I'm not, thrilled with them, people being, ignoring me, I get to go, it's time to just strap my mask on and go on out there and start kicking down doors again. So it's the whole thing of like, wow, we hoped that eventually one day it would be fixed, but we knew without proper legislative change and without anybody being held accountable, nobody sitting in jail, guess what?
Do you feel like, I know you didn't ask for this, you never wanted this, you were working with
happy
metal bands,
right,
and you were doing all these things that you loved, but do you feel like it's sort of like your life's work became clear to you somehow?
I always wanted to not get famous, but to, and we were getting there. Oh my God, I had After the Burials, my favorite bands. I had no idea at that time I was getting sick, but I had them in 2014. I had Acacia Strain. I had these huge bands, and I had great reputations in it. And I had my bands touring with these really big bands, and I'm like, oh my God, we're cutting records, we're doing awesome. And I just wanted to be known as the lady who helped the underdogs, but got them somewhere. I mean, their music was getting picked up, and I was like, that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted, and I wanted my kids to get into music, and I just wanted just that. I wanted to see my everybody succeed, right? And I was looking into buying Planet Rock over in Battle Creek, and I was working with Kevin and Craig Zink, who own the machine shop, and we're like, we'll make a partnership out of it. It's going to be so awesome. I was like, yes, and then smack. So, but if I take a step out, I remember getting stuck in an airport in Gulfport, Mississippi, and because of a tornado. Mississippi, it was weird. And I was washing my socks out in the bathroom sink because I was going to sleep in the airport. We're stuck. And I had a lady come up and stop me, and she's like, hey, you. And I'm like, oh, God, what? And when people say, I know you, it's one of two things. They're going to yell at me, or they're going to ask me about my gross water, right? And she said, thank you. You saved my life. I'm like, what? What did I do? She said, I listened to you, and I realized I was having some of the same health problems. We got our water tested, and this is where I live, and this is what's going on. She was like, I came here from Louisiana to see you. I'm like, to the airport bathroom? Because I don't understand. So it's weird. And somebody had told me, actually, it was actually Jesse Jackson's daughter told me that, yeah, when you're in the middle of a tornado, when you're in the eye, it's everything's spinning around you. You can't see your difference. But every little rock you throw out there is a ripple in the pond, and you don't notice because you're busy, right? And you don't get a lot of love at home, but I mean, everybody else is in it too. So nobody should be sitting around, because people are like, oh, you were here and wrong. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. The people who get up every single day, everybody here in Flint's heroes, because nobody's committed homicide. Nobody's broken and burned anything down. Nobody's lost it, which we have every right to do. But we get up every day and we fight back by surviving, and we fight back by sticking together. But I always said, come with the hero crowns after everything's fixed, after we got clean water, and that nobody else is Flint. Nobody else's mothers, fathers, grandfathers, grandmothers have to look at the pain their kids are going through and realize, oh, it's because I gave you water. Oh, it's because I gave you water. Oh my God, I did this. The moral injury, the trauma that's through here, yeah. So I don't see it, and so it's weird to hear it when you're outside town and hear people say things or repeat things back to you, so it's weird because I didn't get in this to get popular or notice. I'm definitely not popular, but I didn't do that. I did that with the music. I wanted that to be awesome and huge, and the world to hear my bands, and to put on the best festivals and the best shows. I just want everybody to have a good time. Now it's like I just want to break everything down so we can build it back up and build it right for the people. And so now it's such a big ask. You know, it used to be like getting my clients signed by an actual decent label was like the goal, right? Get them on a good tour where they actually didn't starve to death, you know, that kind of thing. That was the big goal. Now it's like, oh my God, we have to overhaul the government. Oh my God, we have this. And there's so many other pieces to it now. You know, I mean, we're looking at systemic racism. We're looking at, oh my God, how they treat the poor and how badly they treat us like disposable people. But at least we're loud, tough, disposable folks. And we don't see ourselves as disposable. So I guess so. I guess it fit. What are you fighting for?
Still active?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Flint rising?
Absolutely. Still going canvassing. We're still doing virtual canvassing. When they started shutting water off again, why not? During the pandemic.
You should name it. Say Flint rising.
Oh, so Flint rising is still going to. We're fighting because they are shutting people's water off during a pandemic where you need to wash your hands, you know, to stay healthy, and you're still mostly at home. And water shutoffs are extremely dangerous because, again, the water sits there, goes bad, bacteria, all that stuff. And we are still fighting for legislative change. We're trying to make this bill better, an infrastructure plan work. We're trying to teach residents, you know, what to do and what to fight for. And then what are you fighting for? That's, I'm not a nonprofit. We aren't a nonprofit. It's a ragtag group of residents that can say and do whatever we please, so we don't have to worry about funding. So, which means we have no money, but it also means that we get to be as blunt and brutal as possible. I'm still Skyping and Zooming with communities all across the United States that are realizing their water is bad. We're dealing with New Jersey right now. And they're privatized, so it's a whole really bad. They're doing the chlorine burnout, and they have a Legionnaires outbreak. So yeah, so we don't stop. You know, we're still fighting. You know, Flint Rising, what are you fighting for? And Flint residents, we're still fighting to get the fixed properly. You know, with respect. Just respect us and fix what you broke, so we can go to our tap and run our expensive water and not be afraid of what's in it because you're not telling us. And they talk about fear a lot and trust. Oh my God, that word. It's not that we don't trust our government. Of course we don't. Why should we? We've got no reason to. We don't trust what's in our water because we know that water, it could be God's perfect spring water, and it's going through contaminated infrastructure and fixtures. We know that's bad, common sense. Also, we can see it, smell it, you know, taste it if you so choose. And we know it's bad. Until you replace the plumbing that the water's running through, it's never gonna be okay. So it's simple, it's very simple. And they try to complicate it with politics, money, blah, 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 saying we're not worth it, basically. Flint's not a community you wanna go out on a limb for, end quote. So we'll still fight for that. We're fighting to get us fixed right because we know if we get fixed properly, other cities will get fixed properly instead of getting swept under the rug like they are now.
This has been an amazing, amazing story. And honestly, one of the most shocking things that you said, among all the shocking things you said, was that Flint, what happens here happens in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of it's true.
Yep. I mean, we the least we could do is have a little bit of, you know, like respect of like, hey, you guys were the original lab rats and you didn't want to be, and you guys exposed it to the rest of the world. So people started looking at their drinking water differently and fighting for proper legislation. But it's also like, it would be cool if we could get fixed properly also, you know, it would be nice. And again, the lawsuits aren't for the people getting rich. We're not going to do that. We know this, but I would really like my house to be safe. I really like the water that's coming through my new faucets, my actual replaced, you know, because that's what everybody's dreams are. Just replace the pipes in our homes and add this really strong filtration system so we can prevent this from ever happening to us ever again. We just want to be safe, and we just want the water to not hurt us that we pay for. And I don't want to buy bottled water anymore. I don't want bottled water. There's no respect in living bottle to bottle, but here we are.
I have one last question for you. Do you ever think about leaving this place?
Yeah. That's one of the most common questions I get asked is, why are you still living in Flint? Why would you live there? There's poverty, there's, you know, violence, there's this and this and this. I'm like, yeah, it's everywhere, you know? Also, that's one of the reasons why I don't leave. I've actually traveled all over North America, Canada, and Mexico as well. The majority of the cities already have an emergency manager type law on the books in 37 states. So the same can happen to you. We get your democracy stripped, and your politicians that are not caring about public health, switch your water for profit or sell it to a company to privatize it, like American Water or Veolia. And then they don't care about you, your regulations, your, you know, whatever. They just care about their bottom line. So where would I move to? People did move. There are a lot of people. There's a lady that I know that she moved to Corpus Christi, Texas. That's actually where they make one of the places they make plastic bottles for our bottled water. She's got cancer because of what the fumes that were let off and into the water. So she tried to escape to save her kids, moved, and got poisoned again. She's not the only one. So no, where do we go? So I guess I'll stay here and fight the devil I know, sort of, then go get poisoned somewhere else thinking that I'm going to be safe. But also I've been to Denver, I've been to all these places that had safe water and I can smell it and I'm like, how can you not smell that? But then I remembered I used to not be able to smell the chemicals in the water. But that aside, I'm not going to move because if I move, if other people, everybody moves, they win. Then they get the land, they get to turn us into a cute little Ann Arbor, a little, suburban, gentrified, cute little college town, which would be nice if it didn't include the backs of killing the people off and destroying their property and their homes, because people have worked really hard. They worked hard in the shop for decades, and they own their home now, and you're taking it because they can't afford their water bills. Nice. And you're killing them inside their homes. Great plan, great business plan. And again, I tell people, they ask, do you think that they did this on purpose? I'm like, I don't think they poisoned us on purpose, but they sure didn't do a damn thing to protect us when they found out it was poison. And then, if we move, they win. That means not only will Flint not get fixed, neither will the next city and the next city and the next city. Right now, we're fighting in Benton Harbor. Same thing, exact same thing. Hamtramck, right now, exact same thing. So it's going to be everywhere. Unfortunately, that seems to be one of our exports. But we're not going to let it. We're going to stick here. We're going to fight, till our dying breaths, and that's what we're going to do. It's like, no, you did this. I didn't break my house. I didn't hurt my kids. I didn't do this to me. I didn't choose this. You did. You should pay for it. And we're not going to shut up until you do. So, fix our water.
Oh my God, how great that a big mouth like you is at the head of this movement. Honestly, it's fantastic.
I'm one of many very loud mouths, and it's been interesting, especially learning from these amazing elders that we have here too, that have just stood up and fought, And I'm like, all right, cool, And then again, seeing our elders get mad and cussing and stuff.
You know what else is great about the story you told is that they say that in democratic politics, if you get the black women out, they're the ones that make it happen. And you told the same story about going into the churches.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I mean, we had a black woman as a mayor, a doctor, and she went toe to toe from day one. As soon as she declared the state of emergency, Dr. Karen Weaver declared the state of emergency, and that's what busted all this open because the previous mayor refused to. She and I almost got arrested on a sidewalk. We were doing a press conference before she was even mayor, and they told us we didn't leave. They were going to call the cops. And they were going to call the cops. I'm like, go ahead, arrest me on. I love PR. I don't want to go to jail, but we're on live TV, and you're going to arrest a black woman that's running for mayor that all she does is she's a doctor and she cares about kids, and a poisoned Flint mom. You do that. I got sued for $3 million, by the way. So, exactly. I got sued for $3 million by the Mark Edwards, but that doesn't have to be in there. And I won. I'm like, yeah, after 9 months of fighting, but it was to silence me and scare me off, and that didn't work. I'm like, $3 million? You couldn't sell my whole block for $3 million. I'm like, if you win, I'll send you a quarter a month and charge you for the stamp. But anyhow, so that was interesting and weird. I got sued for saying our water was not fixed yet because he said it would hurt, for defamation, because he said it would hurt his grants. And because he was getting millions of dollars of grants and awards for fixing our water. I'm like, our water's fixed? Well, when was this happen? Nobody told us, Yeah, so that was interesting. And then PR, it's really bad to, sue a poisoned Flint mother who helped, put you on that pedestal you're on.
No, you're the perfect person.
That was so dumb. That was just so dumb. I'm like,
it's perfect.
So that, and then, so we just have some amazing people here, and we don't give up. And so, and everybody keeps saying, oh, your water's fine. You guys are fine. I don't hear anything about you in the media anymore, so you guys are fine. I'm like, yeah, that's the ass bite of the whole media thing. It's like, yeah, everybody paid attention to us. And when the media stopped, like every time Trump passed gas and they jumped over to whatever story that was. I remember getting cut off and a live hit outside the state of the state because Sarah Palin endorsed Trump. I'm like, does anybody actually care? And Tony DeCopel, who was MSNBC, he was the guy at the time, the reporter, he was like, what is this? He's like, why? So we got pushback for that. But, hey, then when the media stopped coming, then people said, oh, you guys must be fine. Anyway, so sorry, I'm sure it's late and you guys are probably hungry.
We do have to end this interview, but
yeah.
Thank you so much, not only for participating in this.
No problem.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, hey, I'm
Really.
Yeah, and I'm a pain.
I live in New York, but thank you.
Hey, I'm going to New York April 1st for a Brooklyn Museum, some fundreds. It's actually an ongoing. We have fundreds, and they're $100 bills. It's kids have drawn them to say get rid of the lead, and they're like, so we actually delivered with an armored truck and a bunch of dollars that kids have drawn, saying this is what I'm worth. What's it going to take to get the lead out of our water, soil, and paint. Oh yeah, it's a funded project. You should check it out. So they actually have the exhibit, and they're making a permanent exhibit at the Brooklyn Museum. So we're gonna go unveil it, and it's exciting, and to see all our kids, and it's all across the country. So they've been doing it. So yeah, so pretty neat. So we've done some really cool stuff. Like actually, honestly, really cool stuff has happened. But then it's still like, you come home and you're like, oh, you guys still haven't fixed this yet. Aren't you tired of hearing from us yet? I'm like, I think that you all just must really like seeing my face.